Okay, our next movie on the list of the greatest movies of 1991 is Cape Fear. Here's Robert De Niro laughing it up in the theater with a cigar like a madman, trying to annoy the family behind him. This movie is one of the rare times that Scorsese has tackled the thriller slash horror genre. I think he was a fan of the original film. This is a remake. Of a black and white film from 1962. That movie was based on a novel called The Executioners. Three of the stars of that movie, Robert Mitchum being one of them, who has the biggest role, are in this movie as like nods. And then it actually is notable to say that this is Gregory Peck's last on-screen performance. His role is a bit more of a cameo, though. This film was shot by the great Freddie Francis. Scorsese is on the record of being a big fan of one of the movies he shot called The Innocents. And he's also probably, as him and all of his buddies of the time, the movie brats of the time, they grew up on those Hammer and Amicus movies. And he directed quite a few of them. He's also famous for, at least to me, for launching the horror anthology, that run that Amicus did. He did the first one, Dr. Terror's House of Horrors, and then he did Torture Garden and also Tales from the Crypt. Two of the Hammer film that I really enjoy that he did in the Dracula and Frankenstein series, or Dracula Has Risen from the Grave, and then The Evil of Frankenstein. The Frankenstein series is, to me, superior to the Dracula series. Frankenstein, played by Dr. Cushing, Peter Cushing, and then Christopher Lee plays Dracula. They're actually both in both series. Only Christopher Lee is only in the first one, but Evil of Frankenstein is the second one, I believe. And that one was great. That's one of the series where like they get better as they go along, and they get more messed up as they go along. Those movies are pretty screwed up, especially the Frankenstein movies, because they portray Frankenstein as more of like a more of a sociopath, psychopath type. I look at those movies as like I do kind of the Reanimator movies. They're kind of precursors to the Reanimator movies, because he's portrayed more like Herbert West than Frankenstein has been portrayed in any of the movies prior to the Hammer films and since. But yeah, I definitely recommend those movies. But if you are a fan of Peter Cushing in the Van Helsing role, or you like him in more of his wholesome roles, like his role in the Tales from the Crypt segment, then you're going to be pretty blown away by what a crazy psycho asshole he is in in the Frankenstein films. But yeah, Freddie Francis only directed in the beginning of his career, and it was all those horror films. And then he just, not that he doesn't disown them or anything, but he'll talk about them, but he doesn't really look back on them fondly. He doesn't consider himself a director. He prides himself to be a cinematographer, and he would do that for the rest of his career. That's where all of his accolades lie. There are major fans of the Hammer and Amicus films, and they love Freddie Francis for that. But he got his Oscars for cinematography, and he's worked on a lot of award pictures. He's worked with David Lynch 3 times on The Elephant Man, which was a big Oscar movie, and The Straight Story, the weird David Lynch movie, the one that sticks out like a sore thumb in his career. And then he won, I think twice, and one of those was for Glory, which is a great movie. I mean, he shoots movies like beautifully. This movie looks gorgeous. Some of the choices of the framing and I mean, it's also very much Scorsese, because Scorsese films look amazing. Like they, the slick style, like there's some stuff in here, like where, Max Cady will like walk right at the camera, just menace you with just like right in your face. The close-ups, there's so many close-ups. Just the way this is framed, even just like perfectly framed to accentuate the menacing quality of what they're going for. That this guy is a monster, and he's lurking, and it's unsettling, and it works. And the cinematography is a big part of why it works. But yeah, I would definitely recommend those Hammer and Amicus movies if you want to check out Freddie Francis's directing work. This movie was a big success. It made back around 6 times its budget. Like I said, critically, people, I don't think anybody really hated it. They either said it was good to great, and then the critics and the nominations that it received 2 acting nominations, one for Robert De Niro, one for Juliette Lewis, and several other nominations at both the Oscars and the Golden Globes. And so yeah, this movie is not without its fans. It was a mainstream hit, and it's still considered. I mean, I think to some people, especially Scorsese heads and people, when they're making their lists, this doesn't perhaps rank in top 5 for a lot of people. I don't think that people think of Scorsese as a horror slash thriller director. You know, you have this, you have Shutter Island, and kind of like Darren Aronofsky, you could make the argument that there are elements of thriller and horror in all of his movies. There's elements of that in Goodfellas, you know, just the way that the opening of Goodfellas is shot with the red light of the car, and they're digging the hole for the body and then stabbing the guy in the trunk. It's shot and edited and just plays out like a horror sequence, because Scorsese is a fan of all cinema, and one of those genres that he loves is horror, and he sprinkles it, you know. But this is a thriller, but the way that it's executed more like a horror film. And there are sequences in here that are very horrific. Like one that always stays with me and kind of scarred me a little bit as a kid, just like I had never seen anything like that before, is when Max Cady bites the cheek of Ileana Douglas. It's a horrific scene, and the way that it's executed, I mean, Scorsese doesn't hold back. I think that Scorsese might have been dating Ileana Douglas at the time. I'm not sure if this coincides with their relationship, but because she would pop up here and there in some of his directing work. She even pops up in Goodfellas, but also in his producing work, like that movie Search and Destroy, which she has a big role in with Griffin Dunne and Christopher Walken. Kind of a lost 90s direct-to-video movie. There are a lot of great Hitchcockian suspense sequences in this movie, because this is also kind of a nod to Hitchcock. They reuse they basically reuse the Bernard Herrmann score from the original Cape Fear. It's repurposed and adapted by Elmer Bernstein, but it's basically the same music. When you watch both of those movies back to back, the black and white and this one, it's like the music is there. It's like the same shit, and it works great. And I love that in remakes. We're like, you know what? It worked. It worked the last time. Let's just do it again. Why change it up? I hate when they do that. You know, I'm hoping because there's a Highlander remake coming out, and I'm like, man, why not use the Queen music? Why not? Like I have a feeling that they're probably not going to. They're going to say, let's just go a different way. Let's find a group that's updated, or a band that sounds like Queen, or let's not use songs at all. And I'm like, oh man, and they just like lose the essence of what made the original great. And I hope they do. I hope in that instance. And I love that Scorsese was like, you know what? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. The music worked. Let's use it again. And I love that. There's one sequence that is great. The suspense is great. It's elaborate. It's the kitchen scene. Well, it's like an elaborate thing where the guy, the detective is, I think he's like an not an inspector, like a private detective type, is protecting the family. He's sleeping there in the living room, and he's booby trapped the house in a way to where he's tied like this fishing line around a teddy bear, and if the teddy bear moves, then that means someone's trying to get in the house. You know, it's this really elaborate booby trap scenario of trying to protect this family, and it's very like DIY, and it's so funny. He thinks all is well, and he goes to the kitchen, he's having some coffee or whatever, and the maid is in there, and then he's got his back turned to the maid, and then we see the thing about this scene is the sequence is great, but there's a little bit of a cheat in it. I've always thought, because I've watched this movie so much. This is one of those movies I used to watch on repeat a while ago, and you watch it, it's like all in like one take. There are a couple of cuts, but you see the maid enter the kitchen, and you can tell, it's a little blurry, but you can tell that it's her walking in. And you see him, he's drinking his coffee, or, you know, his coffee with bourbon, or whatever it is. I can't remember right now, but, and then she's doing her thing, and then it cuts a couple of times. So the cheat happens in the cut, where then when it cuts back to him drinking the coffee, you see the maid, and the maid turns around, and it's Robert De Niro, in a close-up. And then he, like, chokes the guy out with the wire. And I'm like, you know, I get it. Like, it worked because we saw the maid come in, so we didn't think. We didn't think, like, that's Robert De Niro because we saw it was the maid. But that's a cheat, right? Because the only reason we were caught off guard is because you lied to us by showing us it was the maid. I've always forgiven it because it's just so easy to, like, forgive Scorsese because he's such a genius. He's just, like, a master at this medium. But I've forgiven it because it was like, oh, it's like an artistic way of saying that's what we want to see. That's what, like, we're expecting to see. So he does show us that it's the maid, because he could have, maybe they tried it the other way. I'm thinking maybe there's footage of Robert De Niro walking into the kitchen in the background, and they're like, you know what? The body frame is completely different. Everyone's going to see that it's Robert De Niro, the face, like, everybody knows what Robert De Niro looks like. So if we do this, even if it's in the background and blurry, they're going to know. And we don't want them to know. There could have been a way for them to not show the maid come in and just hear her, and maybe shoot it in the way where you don't see her face. There could have been a way, but I think it's just such an interesting choice that you see her, that it's her, and then it's not her. And it's just, you know. But the sequence is great. It's like, it's horrifying. And there's so many good scenes in this movie. Everybody performs it extremely well, too. I think Nick Nolte, this is one of the best things he's ever done. He is so good in this. And at the end of that scene where he's frantically running out of the house and shooting at nothing into the darkness, and Jessica Lange is grabbing onto her and begging him to come back in. And it's like, because they don't know where he is, and they don't know how he got in the damn house to begin with. And Juliette Lewis, I think this is her first movie, and she's great in this. Her first movie out the gate, if that is her first one, I'm pretty sure it is. Getting an Oscar nomination is huge. You just feel the terror in this movie. It feels real. Tangible, and just like, and that's the performers. Like, it's the cinematography, it's the editing, it's the directing, but it's the performers, a big part of that. And then the end sequence on the boat, where they shot it on a set with a boat and a bunch of water, and and I saw some footage of the making of that, and heard, like, there was a bit of that. There was a bit of a nightmare and dangerous. But it was worth it. It was so worth it. I mean, this is the time where they couldn't exactly CGI it, but there were clever ways they could have done where they didn't need to do it in that way. But the boat, I think, would rock, and there's all this water, and when you see that, it just feels it has that kind of set quality. But that's great. I love when movies do that, and it feels real, but also it feels like a set. I can't even explain it, but it's just, I appreciate seeing a thing. I appreciate when they build something and you see it. And even if you know they built it, it's so much better than if they would have recreated it in a computer. Obviously, they didn't have that choice. But now, recreating it in the computer, or even in a map painting, you know, just like really building a thing. And when you see that, all that work they put in, it's just like, man, it takes it to another level, you know. I think De Niro is great in this. De Niro is always great. But this is a very unique role for him in his filmography. He hasn't really quite played a psycho like this before. Travis Bickle is a different kind of psycho, and he plays it completely different. He's cartoonish, but in the best way. Like, with his accent and everything. He's just like, I think I heard him describe that it was like a killer shark. Like, just like he just exists for one thing, which is to mess this family up and ruin their lives, and then inevitably kill them. And he's focused, and he's got the money to do it, you know, because a relative of his died, so he has the funds, and he's got the time, and he's got a game plan, and he's just headed for that target, you know. And De Niro plays him like that, and then throwing the religious aspect in of him being kind of a religious fanatic. And all of these things that make up his psychotic personality. Yeah. Just the lines in this movie that are it's just so quotable. You know, maybe it's because I've seen it so much, but it's like, counselor, come out, wherever you are. Could you be there? Would you be there? Yeah. And this guy is like a machine. He's like beaten by a baseball bat and chains by this group that Nick Nolte hires to get him out of the picture, to take him out of the picture, and he just takes a beating like crazy, grabs a chain, and then turns the tables on all of them. And he's like all bloody and messed up, but he's still like completely ready to fuck up Nick Nolte, who's hiding behind a dumpster, making sure it all goes to plan. Of course, it doesn't go to plan because nothing can kill this guy. Even in the end, when you see, I mean, spoiler alert, I guess, but when you see he's like slowly going down in the water and drowning, and he's like making all those weird chants and nonsense language. He's like, oh, blah, 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 blah. He's like making all these weird sounds as he's going under. And then he's just like staring, and he's like slowly sinking down like a frigging swamp creature or something. And it's like, you think, because of everything we've been through and everything we've seen, that he's gonna just pop. He's fine. He's breathing water right now. He's completely fine. He's gonna come back because nothing can kill this guy. He's like the Terminator on crack. He's the Terminator with flesh and blood. He's an unexplainable Terminator. It doesn't make sense. He's like a ghost. He might as well be. So this movie is amazing. It's one of my favorite Scorsese films. No, it's not one of his gangster movies. I love his gangster movies. I think I definitely would probably at this point put Goodfellas above this. But top 5 for me. Might not be top 5 for everybody because he has so many movies, but this is top 5 for me for sure. So I'm gonna rank this Big Surprise as a classic. Classic. Congratulations, Cape Fear. You earn every penny of that classic title. Thank you so much for your fine people's time. And I hope you have a nice life. And I hope to see you on the next one. And bye-bye.
Show up to the party with the wrong face in space. No one hears you scream like a primate. First dates can be long and hard like a phallus. Chalice, drinking like a fiend at the palace.